The movie starts in an underground boxing ring. Carter, a fighter who has been winning a lot, is feeling really confident. But everything changes when Dalton, a tough guy everyone fears, enters the ring. Dalton removes his hoodie, and Carter immediately loses his confidence. The fight is winner takes all. Carter, realizing he can't beat Dalton, decides not to fight. Dalton gets all the prize money, but one angry thug who lost a bet isn't happy. He tries to stab Dalton. Bad idea. Dalton stays calm, almost like a superhero, while the thug quickly regrets attacking him. As Dalton is patching up his wound, a woman named Frankie approaches. She knows who he is and offers him a job at her bar. The bar is full of troublemakers, and the police won't help. She's willing to pay him $5,000 a week. That's $20,000 a month. But Dalton isn't sure if he wants the job. Dalton has no phone, no home, and his car is falling apart. He feels like giving up. At one point, he even considers stopping his car on train tracks. But as he changes his mind, the car won't start, and a train crashes into it. Amazingly, Dalton survives. Maybe Frankie's offer is worth thinking about. Dalton decides to go to the new town, where he meets Charlie, a girl who runs a bookstore. Charlie and her dad help him find the bar. When Dalton finally arrives, he learns it's called the Roadhouse. Inside the bar, Billy, a waiter, recognizes Dalton right away. He's kind of famous. For now, the bar is calm, and Dalton even says it feels peaceful. Laura, the barista, laughs and tells him the peace won't last. That night, a big fight breaks out. Bottles and glasses fly everywhere, and even the live band gets involved. But Dalton doesn't join the chaos. Later, a biker gang arrives and starts destroying the bar. That's when Dalton steps in.
I've been punched in the face too many times.
Can I talk to you guys outside?
I got some work to do. Another one.
Those are your bikes out there, right?
Mine's a red one on the right.
He walks outside and messes with their bikes to get their attention. When the gang comes out, Dalton calmly asks if they have insurance and how far the hospital is.
Do you have insurance? Can I get medical insurance?
Yeah, I'm not the one that's gonna need it.
He's joking, but they don't laugh. Then the fight starts.
Not fair.
Dalton dodges their punches and takes them down one by one without breaking a sweat. After the fight, he borrows Frankie's car and drives the injured bikers to the hospital. At the hospital, a nurse named Ellie teases Dalton, calling him a troublemaker. She notices he's bleeding and helps him patch up his wound, saying his quick fix didn't work. She asks if he ever wins fights. Dalton, staying calm, replies,
No one ever wins a fight.
Back at the bar, Frankie gives Dalton his first paycheck and lets him stay at her old boathouse. She jokes about a crocodile nearby and tells him to be careful. That night, Dalton has a bad dream about his last UFC fight, where he was the challenger. Before the dream gets worse, Laura wakes him up with breakfast. She tells him how many bouncers have come and gone at the bar and hopes Dalton will stay. Later, Dalton visits Charlie's bookstore to use a computer. While he's at the bookstore, chaos breaks out at a nearby store. Some bikers are causing trouble. Charlie grabs a bat to defend herself, but the bikers just laugh. Then Dalton steps out. The bikers take one look at him, remember who he is, and back off immediately. Meanwhile, out on a boat, Brant, the biker boss, is getting shaved and is angry. His men keep failing to scare people away from local businesses because Dalton keeps stopping them. Back at the Roadhouse, another fight breaks out, this time over music. Dalton uses it as a chance to teach Billy how to handle trouble. He tells him, if someone has a knife, step back and stay safe. Billy breaks up the fight like Dalton showed him. When the fight starts again, Dalton helps but lets Billy finish it. Over the next few days, Dalton teaches Billy more skills. Dalton also notices another worker, Reef, has scars on his hands. Dalton guesses Reef used to be a boxer. He pairs Billy and Reef together to keep the Roadhouse under control, so he doesn't have to step in every time. One night, while helping a drunk customer leave safely, Dalton sees the biker gang outside. They glare at him and warn that they'll be back. Later, Dalton dreams about his UFC days when he used to fight without thinking twice. Now he's more careful. The next morning, Dalton runs into Ellie, the nurse at the Roadhouse. They flirt a little, moving past just being friends. After work, Dalton heads home to the boathouse, but he notices a car following him. Suddenly, the car speeds up and tries to hit him. Dalton survives and heads back to his place. There, Dell, the leader of the biker gang, is waiting with a gun. Dalton reacts quickly, flipping a table and knocking Dell into the water. A crocodile nearby appears and Dell doesn't make it out. The next morning, the police search for Dell's body, but locals mention that crocodiles hide their food. At the bookstore, Charlie shows Dalton a map of the Roadhouse, but something about it bothers him. As he leaves, a man threatens him and demands he come meet Brant, the biker boss. Dalton stays calm and warns the man that if he loses his finger, he won't be able to hold his gun. When the man tries to act tough, Dalton disables him and says,
See what I mean? It's really painful. Your friend is gonna need a doctor now.
Dalton later asks Frankie why the bikers are so focused on the Roadhouse. Frankie shrugs, saying it's probably just a territorial thing. Meanwhile, the man with the injured finger returns to Brant and admits he failed to bring Dalton. Brant is furious. His big plans are falling apart because of one bouncer. His dad calls from prison, but Brant, too angry to talk, throws the phone out the window. He tells the injured man to go fetch it. Later, Knox, a man sent by Brant's father, arrives in town to fix the mess. He parks his Ferrari at Brant's house. Knox slaps Brant, telling him their dad sent him to handle the situation. Brant begs for one more chance to deal with Dalton, and Knox agrees. Ellie takes Dalton on a boat ride to her favorite spot at sea. She tells him that Brant's family is very rich and owns a lot of the land. Ellie asks about Dalton's past, but he doesn't want to share. However, Ellie already knows about him and doesn't care. This helps Dalton open up a little more, and they grow closer. Later, police show up at Dalton's boathouse and take him in for questioning about Dell's disappearance. At the station, the sheriff tells Dalton to leave town or face serious trouble. When Dalton talks back, the sheriff and his men beat him and hold him at gunpoint. Suddenly, Ellie shows up at the station and slaps the sheriff, her father, for mistreating Dalton. Ellie offers Dalton a ride back and opens up about her family's connection to Brant. Her father and Brant's dad were once close friends, but everything changed when Brant's father went to prison. The sheriff, once loyal to Ellie's dad, shifted his allegiance to Brant. While Ellie and Dalton are talking, Brant decides to stir up trouble at Charlie's bookstore, making his presence known. Later that evening, as Dalton prepares for his night shift at the Roadhouse, Brant makes his move and shows up for a direct confrontation. Brant knows Dalton won't be scared or bribed. He even dug up Dalton's infamous UFC fight on YouTube, where Dalton fatally punched an opponent. To up the ante, Brant sends in Knox and his biker gang, who storm the Roadhouse. Knox declares the Roadhouse his turf and starts tearing the place apart. He even grabs a woman off her date. Bouncers Billy and Reef try to stop him, but Knox easily takes them both out. With no one left to stop the chaos, a massive bar fight erupts. Dalton, trying to enjoy a quiet coffee, is reluctantly pulled into the fray. Knox mocks him, saying he came specifically for him. The two clash, but Knox dominates, using his brute strength and gang support. Knox beats Dalton badly and drags him outside. Bloodied and beaten, Dalton quietly gets up and starts to leave, just as Ellie and the police arrive to find the Roadhouse in ruins. At the boathouse, Dalton packs his bags when Frankie reveals the truth. Brant wants to build a resort, and Frankie is the last obstacle. Initially indifferent, Dalton changes his tone when Frankie admits she's terrified of what Brant might do. Brant, meanwhile, learns Dalton is still alive as he reviews his resort plans. As Dalton heads to the bus station, he notices Charlie's bookstore engulfed in flames. Firefighters inform him that Charlie and her father were hospitalized. Remembering how Charlie first welcomed him to town, Dalton can't walk away. He storms Brant's estate, confronting one of his goons. Dalton makes it clear burning down the bookstore was a mistake, brutally dispatching the man and shoving him into the pool. With one of the bikers watching, Dalton intimidates him into revealing Brant's next meeting spot, where a significant cash deal is happening. Dalton tracks down a corrupt cop at the scene, knocks him out, and steals a briefcase full of cash. Before leaving, he frames the cop for murder, ensuring chaos ensues. Using a payphone, Dalton anonymously tips off the police and news about the cop's location. Just as Dalton finishes planting explosives, Ellie's dad warns him that Brant has kidnapped Ellie and will kill her unless Dalton returns the money. Skeptical but unwilling to risk Ellie's life, Dalton agrees to meet. He sneaks onto a boat and evades Ellie's ex-boyfriend, who happens to be a cop. Meanwhile, Knox shows up at Brant's estate, only to find it empty. On Brant's boat, the sheriff denies Ellie's kidnapping until Brant himself admits it. Dalton seizes the distraction to detonate the explosives, throwing Brant and his men into disarray. Dalton searches the boat and rescues Ellie from a locked room just as an explosion shatters the windows. They escape into the water, but Brant catches Ellie and takes her to the Roadhouse, determined to destroy it. Meanwhile, Knox faces off with Dalton in a brutal showdown. Dalton manages to board Brant's boat and outmaneuvers Knox, sending him flying into the water. Furious, Brant attempts to ram Dalton's boat but ends up flipping his own. Dalton and Ellie escape, but Brant survives. This time, Dalton decides to finish things for good. Brant grabs a fishing spear but is quickly taken down. Knox returns for a final battle, and the fight intensifies. Dalton struggles as Knox lands devastating blows. Wounded, Dalton barely manages to recover. Knox, frustrated by Brandt's commands, turns on him, which gives Dalton an opening. Using wooden sticks, Dalton overpowers Knox, ending the fight for good. As the sheriff arrives, he assures Dalton he's covered, but advises him to leave town. Frankie remains optimistic, believing the Roadhouse will recover. In the end, Dalton quietly boards a bus as Charlie's dad finds the case of money, only to realize Dalton is already gone. What do you think about this recap? Does it keep you on the edge of your seat? If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more thrilling movie recaps.